Welcome to Rising Woman Leaders. I'm your host, Meredith Ram, and I believe the time has come for women to share their gifts, their voice, and their stories. I love seeing women spiritually and financially empowered, thriving in their life's work, and doing what they love every day. I've gathered a community of women living their dreams to tell us their stories and inspire us to step into more courage, self-love, and feminine leadership. If you like this podcast, use the hashtag Rising Woman Leaders. Follow me on Instagram at Meredith Ram and sign up for email updates at risingwomanleaders.com to get all the new and inspiring content. Now get cozy with a journal and a cup of tea. I hope you enjoy today's show. I'm here today with Tiffani Lloyd, who is a Las Vegas native and lifelong truth seeker. Surrounded by the ancient stones of the desert, she embraced her natural, spiritual, psychic intuitions at an early age. She has, with time, opened herself more to her truth and accepted her calling as a healer and a guide. She honed her natural skills through training and practice, and she's a certified spiritual life coach, a past life regression counselor, Akashic records reader and instructor, Reiki healer, bars certified. She's known widely in the metaphysical world as a soulful intuitive and also the owner of TLC Consulting, a spiritual consulting business. Her background in nonprofit and business management led her education and career to a master's in business, to seek PhD in metaphysics and psychology. And Tiffani's true talent is to unlock the knowledge, power, light, and darkness within all of us. She recognizes our lives are in a constant evolutionary cycle of growth and expansion and helps others to navigate the trials and tribulations of existing here in schoolyard earth. I love that. Yeah, and she also really helps us remember that you have all you need within you.
Yes. Yes, and yes, all of that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I would love to just hear how you first discovered your spiritual abilities, your psychic abilities. Mm-hmm. Were you a young child? What was your childhood?
I remember specifically, it was 7 years old, and I born and raised a Christian. My grandfather was the pastor of the first mega church here in Las Vegas, Nevada. He was the first to have like over 2,000 members that attended his church. He started out with a small church, and it grew and grew, and he ended up building a second church with his own two hands, mind you. He had others that helped him, but he actually built the second church to the expansion level, which was like over 2,000 members. And I grew up in that church here in the Valley. And as a little girl, my awakening started. And it was very interesting because my grandfather, who was extremely Christian, extremely Baptist, very by the Bible, but he was a very wise man and a very learned man. And he was very connected to his spiritual journey. So he would teach us things about, the pre-Adamic periods and, the time that existed before Adam and Eve, but if you think about that, right, in Christianity, it starts Genesis in the beginning, there was only Adam and Eve, right? So him teaching us behind the scenes about there were times before Adam and Eve, and there were people who inhabited the earth before that, stuck with me as a child. So growing up in the church, what ended up happening was because people did not accept his expanded version of teaching, he had to remain within the parameters of that religious sect, and how they taught and what they believed. So his hands were tied. But my entire life, I'm remembering these teachings of my grandfather. And what's interesting is I stayed within the church because, it's what my family was. Grew up But the entire time I'm like, yes, there's more than this. There's got to be more than this. This can't be it, you know? And I remember being part of the pageantry and all of there was so many activities, so many organizations. The church is like a little city, right? And I remember being within that city and nothing fit me. And interestingly enough, I could do everything, you know? I could insert myself into any areas of that little city that I wanted to, but nothing felt right for me, you know? And I remember finding all my little girlfriends, finding their niche within the church and feeling like they found their calling in life, and I just never felt that. So interestingly enough, I grow up and I'm a dreamer. I get a lot of information in dreams. And I remember calling my grandfather, like, he should have been my therapist. I'm like, Grandpa, why is this happening in my dreams? What does this mean? And what's interesting about this is that he never answered me. He would just sit and he would listen, right? Now this started like preteen time, right?
Yeah.
So imagine time moving on throughout the years, and I'm constantly talking to him, pulling him aside, calling him on the phone after a dream. Grandpa, why am I feeling like this? What is this all about? And it wasn't until I was grown with 2 small children and a husband at home, and I had another one of my like earth-shaking dreams, and I remember calling him, and I'm like, Grandpa, and I'm sitting on like the bar area of my kitchen, and I'm like, come on, what is going on? And again, up until this point, he never answered me. And he finally said these words to me. He said, Granddaughter, this walk is not your walk. And him saying those words were like magic for me. Like literally shackles fell off of my body. And I felt free for the first time since I was a child, because I would have all of these spiritual experiences, and we were taught that they were to be manifested in church, and through Jesus, right? None of my spiritual expansion, none of my abilities, none of my gifts ever manifested through that venue. It was always in my home, which was my sanctuary. It was always in my home. And I'm jumping ahead, but I have a spiritual language that I speak, that I've spoken since I was a child, that I didn't know what it was. But it's just complete magic, and it's healing. But I didn't know what it was. Well, in the Black church, you know, they call it speaking in tongues. And they believe it because you're filled with the Holy Ghost or the Holy Spirit. And my gift, and again, they believe that is given through what they call tarrying within the church. That didn't happen for me. My spiritual language was gifted to me through the divine in my home, which was my sanctuary. All of this stuck with me, right? I call it sticking pins in things, because I would stick pins in things that was like, okay, this doesn't make sense, but I will understand it later, right? And this is me as a child, sticking pins in things. But all of this stayed with me throughout my childhood into my adulthood. So fast forward to my grandfather saying, hey, Tiffani, this walk is not your walk. And I'm literally like, the first time I felt free and fully awakened in this lifetime. I remember it so clearly and so purely. And so I just went buck wild. I remember the first thing I did was I enrolled in a Wiccan university, and then I started taking Wiccan classes, and then I took a Buddhist course. I remember taking Hebrew as a language, and I just started exploring everything. Mm-hmm. And that really helped me to just open up out of the box that my life had existed in for that time, you know, throughout and it was like literally, and I'm from a child, like an early child, I've always had a connection with spirit. Like it's never been odd to me to hear someone speaking to me, you know, that's not here, that's not present in a human form. It's never been odd to me. And I do associate that with my upbringing and the spirituality of my family. However, you know, as a child, I remember being shown and directed and protected. And so it's never been odd for me to be who I am, you know, it's just the development of it has been quite the journey.
Yes. Yes. And at what point did you start to think about reincarnation or maybe having lived past lives?
I believe it was in my marriage when I started questioning a lot. I went through a period of extreme discontentment in my marriage. I mean, there was nothing. And my husband, if you know my husband, he is like the salt of the earth. He loves me to no end. When I met you, the weekend I met you, I was in Vegas. And I was like, I want to go to this conference in Oakland. And he was like, I'll drive you. So literally, but this is who I'm married to. It's like his purpose is to love me. And it's like, and he knows it and he does it well, But I went through this period of just like, why did I do this? Because I know, and so it was interesting because I laugh now because wow, that is a whole other. I should write a book about that experience because it was so real, so palpable, so. But it was, and sometimes I think back and I'm thinking, I was so unfair to him. But literally, there was nothing I could do about it.
Mm.
It was literally just who I was, and I couldn't change that or get out of that or get around it. But now I recognize it was part of that growth that, I was meant to experience on this journey. And why did I forget the initial question and what you asked me?
About past lives and reincarnation.
And so it was through my discontentment with that I started exploring, well, maybe my discontentment with this did not start in this lifetime.
Yeah, there was some kind of karma that was being.
I was 100% correct. When I started exploring my past lives, and it started off, I believe, with one reading that someone had given me, and it was kind of vague, and it was kind of like not very tangible in regards, but it was like there was a connection made, and I was like, I need to explore this a little further.
Yeah.
So I ended up going to Sedona and training in past life regression. And I didn't do it for business purposes at that time. At that time, I was doing it for me, but in the interim became a past life regression counselor, but what I found out is that my husband and I have lived many lives together. I mean, we've existed together. We've killed each other in some lives. But we chose this life to come back together to heal all of the past connections and all the past karma that we had built together and that had built up and created these blockages within our own energetic systems. We chose each other this lifetime to come together to heal those things together. And it's quite beautiful. Past life regression is an extremely healing experience that I'm just granted that I'm blessed that I was led to, because and granted the opportunity to explore, because it's extremely healing. It allows people to not have to do so much work. You know what I'm saying? I just recently conducted a group workshop, which I love to do, where everybody goes into a past life, and what ends up happening is spirit will pull forward whatever needs to be healed within that lifetime, within this lifetime, I should say, at that time, to advance your soul's journey. So it's just beautiful to experience all of the healing and the awakenings and the ahas and, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is why I had this pattern in my life. So yeah, but that's past life regression is amazing and very healing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Are you able to almost relive the memory in a difficult memory? How would you bring about the healing?
So the process that I do is we will go to, like, if a person comes to me and like, I want to release my irrational fear of love, right? And so we put that intention out to the universe, and then we call in spirit to be able to support us in this. And 100% of the time, they are taken to the lifetime or lifetimes where that irrational fear actually was rooted, materialized, and grew. Mm-hmm. And so through the process that I personally conduct, there's at the end, we go into a space of healing, and we bring forth the souls of individuals that were a part of that interaction, and B, your soul And we actually conduct a healing in this space and in this time so that you're not bringing any of this back with you into your present life. And that is, again, that's my personal process of it. But again, it's 100% work for me because, again, I'm guided spiritually on how I work with every single client that I'm interacting with. So nothing is templated. Nothing is, well, this is how I do. It's literally spirit-led and guided.
Yeah. I'm curious, in that space, are you seeing images and visions about their past life, or is it mostly the client who is starting to see what was there?
Sometimes it's both of us. Sometimes I'm feeling what they're feeling during that time. It depends on how spirit wants to manifest my connection, because again, I'm here to help you to heal. So it's not up to me. I don't need to see everything that you're seeing. However, what I've noticed is that sometimes I will take on an energy because spirit is telling me this is something that needs to be addressed. This is what needs to be healed from this. And I'll know what to do and what direction to take during that time. Case in point, I had the 20-year-old one, no, he's 21 now, young man, just last month. And he has been, in all of his relationships, he calls it acting out. It's like he would let people get so close to him, and then he would do something to self-sabotage it because he was holding a blocker, and the reasoning behind it that manifested during our session was because when his parents broke up and divorced, he associated that with all relationships. So he put this barrier up so that he could protect himself. So before he came to see me, I went into meditation and prayer. And he was actually just coming for a coaching session. It was not, and spirit said, regress him back to age 7. So I put him on the table and we regressed him back to 7 years old. And 7 years old was that time where he felt free. He felt complete love. It was before his parents' breakup. He felt surrounded and protected, right? So we took him back to that time. And what ended up happening during the process is he reintegrated with that energy of the child of his being. And he put it back in, he really reintegrated it into him so that he could feel that wholeness again and experience that wholeness again. So when we were done, he was like, I don't even want to leave this space. I don't want to leave you. This is too, and it was beautiful. And his question that stuck with me is, do you always regress people back to the age 7? And I'm like, that's how I was led to regress you. This is your healing, Yeah. And what I'm learning about working with clients is I have to always remind them that healing is not templated. If you're truly on a journey of healing, you have to find out what works for you. Not what works for the masses, but what works for you.
Yes. Absolutely. And I'm curious about the Akashic records. Could you explain to us what that is and how you use that?
So I usually use like a big, etheric computer in the sky, right? With information about everything that's ever been on this planet and within other dimensions. Everything, right? So you can say a computer system that stores all of this data, or you can say it's a huge library that has all of this information put in books, put in pamphlets, put in on paper, but it's a documentation of everything that is, right? So we have our own records. We have everything that's Meredith in your own library, everything that's Tiffani in my very own personal library, all the lives that I've lived, all the experiences that I've had, all the hurts, all the diseases, everything is in there. And then all of our potentials are within there because, again, we're creators. So we're creating right now. So there are some things that are futuristic that are put in place, but most things are potentiality that exist within the records, right? Yes. So you enter this place and you do it so that you can better harness you. That's it. You want to harness, you want to master who you are because we come here to learn and grow ourselves and our souls, right? So we go into the records to better understand who we are, where we've been, why we've done things, the experiences that we've had are right there, and they're very tangible, right? So you're able to go in and understand better why you are who you are today. And what's beautiful is you can connect with your guardians in there, and they have so much wisdom about you because they are a part of you. So you can ask questions, you can ask for guidance, you can ask, and it's all there, just waiting, it's beautiful. And again, that's a place I was led to, because I knew nothing about the Akashic records. And one day I'm sitting in the middle of my bed, and Spirit speaks to me and says, you need to learn about the Akashic record. And I'm like, what? What is that? I got on Google and I started looking at what is the Akashic record.
Wow.
And I found a teacher in Santa Barbara. And she had a workshop coming up, and, you had to go through an interviewing process. And so I interviewed and applied to go because, again, Spirit told me, so I'm going on this journey. And that's how I became an Akashic record practitioner. And then throughout time, it was interesting because this very shortly after my training, Spirit said that I'm going to give you your own prayer, because the way I learned was through a prayer. And Spirit said, I'm going to give you your own prayer. And so I was like, what? Huh? I didn't get it at that time. But after that, about a year and a half into that, of becoming a practitioner, literally, Spirit downloaded to me my entire curriculum, a prayer. So now I teach the Akashic records. And I teach people how to access their own personal records.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. It's such a amazing tool that we can access.
It really
to gain more insight about our lives right now.
And it's accessible to everybody, Again, I say everybody, but what I've noticed is if you're not ready, A, it won't present to you, and B, the information is like extremely limited that you're able to access. Because again, this is not about us going in and playing, and just because I just want to know. This is about soul growth. So the information that's provided is that soul growth information to help guide you, So a lot of people do things outside of themselves, I've noticed, They do things just because I'm curious. And it's great to be curious. We're curious beings. That's how we learn and we grow. But we never want to get so curious that we lose the center of our being and we start doing everything outside of ourselves and not anything for our soul's growth, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I would love to hear your perspective on what you see happening in our world right now in terms of ascension, evolution, the souls coming to Earth at this time. Just what's your perspective on what's happening?
That is such a huge question.
Yeah.
So much is happening, so much is transpiring. We have souls from other etheric, I'll say continents coming into Earth. We have souls from this Earth actually leaving and going to exist in other dimensions. I mean, there's so much happening right now. But for those of us who are planted here on planet Earth right now, we are experiencing, and I'll just speak for my lifetime, an expansion that is so uncomfortable. It's so wild and it's so unpredictable. For so long, everything felt like it was a trajectory of a template, right? So you could say, this is how you heal. This is how you do this. This is how you do that. It's not like that any longer. It's right now is a time of individual expansion. We are shifting dimensionally at a rate that we have never done before. You cannot trust what you're told. You have to go within and allow your own personal being to reveal to you the truths that you're supposed to live by. And that's what's so important, and it's so imperative that each of us do. We can't afford to bandwagon. We can't afford to hate anybody or anything, because everything has a connection to everything else. Even the aliens have a connection to us, But if you live in a limited existence and you don't open yourself up to possibility, you will forever live in fear, and you will forever live believing that everything is doomed. And that's not true. It's absolutely not true. We could talk about this subject for hours. And I literally just based on my personal experiences. And it's like, again, I cannot deny my experiences, and I refuse to deny them. So when someone says something contrary against, something that I've experienced personally, I don't like drag them, and I don't say, I don't say anything against them, but that's their experience. That's their reality. I can't down that, but what I cannot do for myself is disregard what I've experienced. It's for me, that's a sin against myself.
Right. Yeah, and we need to look within ourselves to feel what is truth.
Yes.
One of the things that I've really been feeling and hearing from other people, and when I hear it, it's like, yes, it feels like a yes in my body, is around the feminine rising. And kind of this divine feminine Christ energy coming to our planet at this time and helping us to, in this ascension, and creating unity, consciousness, and balance within ourselves and in our world. Do you have anything you want to share about that?
Interesting enough, I was meditating last week, and I was asking my ancestors, literally, what is it that I need to pull forward right now for me right now in this, today is what today, what do I need to pull forward into my energies? And I do a lot of work with gods and goddesses. I'm not a worshiper of them, but I do work with them. And my team told me that I needed to pull forward Christ energy and Kali, the goddess. And what was interesting at that time was there was an uproar in the Black community, and it's really, really, really difficult for me to stay in a place of neutrality when the beings that I came here this lifetime, as are always being persecuted. And our persecution is constantly diminished. Our persecution is constantly told that we need to get over it. And that, that we're at, slavery happened this long ago. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps and get over it. It's really hard to exist like that when my experience is completely different than what you see and what you understand, So something had happened. I can't remember because something happens all the time. But I was really struggling this day. And I was like, guys, what do I need to pull forward right now? Because I'm struggling. And at the time, I couldn't understand why they were saying you need to pull forward Christ's energy and you need to pull forward Kali's energy. And it was for two different reasons. They were not even connected. But at that time, I was like, all right, guys, if that's what I'm supposed to pull forward. So I literally meditated, and I brought in that master, that goddess. And I mean, and I love to meditate with candles, because spirits, when they're in the space, although I can feel them, it's beautiful to see that candle dancing. And, as I'm making my petition known, they're dancing and saying, I'm here with you, and I recognize your petition. So at that time, I had to pull forth more of Christ energy, which is that unconditional love, more of that, whatever it is, we are all one and we're unified, right? Because I was struggling that day. I was like, I can't with this, I really can't, because I'm human. So it was interesting because in pulling forth that Christ energy, Spirit began to speak to me. And Spirit says, you cannot afford to get caught up in these earthly entanglements if you want to continue to ascend and experience what your soul desires to experience within other dimensions, within other beings. You cannot segment. So no matter how ugly it is right now on earth, you know the truth that lies behind it all. You know that love is all that there is. And this earth is in a place of trying to divide that so that you cannot unify, right? And I needed that reminder that day. I needed it so very badly because I was hurting. I felt broken, and it didn't happen to me personally, and then I had a friend, and he's this very brazen New Yorker, and he's a sweet man. He's very sweet. And he's done a lot of work in the metaphysical community. But during that time, I'd spoken with him, and I'm telling him, my feelings and my emotions. And the words that came out of his mouth that day, I was so just like disenchanted. And I know that this man is not prejudiced. I know that he's not a racist. But the words he said to me were, well, if you're not happy here, just leave. And I'm like, that's not what I'm saying to you. But it broke me in a way that I didn't recognize that was broken inside of me, though, because I was like, this is my friend, and this is what he tells me when I'm expressing my emotions in regards to what's happening to Black people all across America, to just leave the country. But it was an awakening for me, because again, I had put expectations on him that I didn't realize that I had, and I live a life of, I should not have any expectations of people, allow them to be who they are, where they are in that space that they're holding right now. But there was some healing that I needed to do behind that. And I needed to pull in that Christ energy to be able to harness what I needed and to heal the way that I needed. And interestingly, and then I'll jump to Kali, because I'm bringing, she's the goddess of, death and life, endings and renewals. And I'm working on some areas of my life that I need to completely deaden. I have to let it go and let it die so that I can bring in the complete newness of what is right now. So she's been working with me, deadening my past, but it was just interesting that I needed those two energies at the same time together to work on two completely different parts of my life. But you know what? They showed up and they helped. And I'll give you guys gratitude right now, because you helped a sister. You really did. But that's, that story.
I actually feel like Christ consciousness and Kali can be two sides of the same coin. Like we need both of them. We need all of it, because Kali, I actually used to be very afraid of Kali and that whole energy. And I went through an initiation this winter, and I was in India, and I actually was doing this Kali retreat and finally welcoming Kali into my life, because there was a lot there that needed to be destroyed, like destructed and composted and let go of, so that something new could birth. And I actually went through a pretty challenging week of sickness and emotions and lots of purification. And at the end of my trip, I actually went to this women's circle where it was so unified and so heart opening and just so welcoming and loving and soft and feminine. And I realized, like, I went into this total bliss place, and I realized in that I had been holding part of the divine feminine at an arm's distance. And because of that, I wasn't able to fully experience the spectrum of what is the other side of that unconditional love. Christ
I get it. Yes.
We need both. We really do. And actually, I feel, especially in terms of race and what is happening right now and how people are waking up, and the energies of Kali and Christ, like both of them are so needed.
Speaking to my soul right now. I love it.
Yeah, it's like the anger and the boundaries, and standing up and putting our foot down around things that we can't put up with anymore. And also that energy of okay, intimacy and connection and love and softening, they're both needed.
Absolutely. And I spent many years in this hardened space of, I need to be independent, and that brokenness came from, again, my grandparents, when they were this pinnacle in the community, and they ended up breaking up and divorcing. And I lost it. And I didn't realize it, though, until I was an adult in my own marriage, that I was putting up this I don't need a man. I don't to validate me. I can do this on my own energy for so long that it was integrating into who I was, not allowing me to fully experience the divine feminine side of my being. Totally didn't recognize it until like maybe it hasn't even been a year. And those barriers started just falling away. And when the barriers fell away, the shackles from my eyes fell away. And I was able to see where I was holding myself at bay and not fully integrating into who I am as a being. And at the end, there has to be a balance, there has to be a balance. And I was not. I was completely was not. But again, that's part of the healing that we, choose to experience when we come here. And so I've decided, to exist in a space of just complete allowance and self-mastery. I want to master my being. And my desire is to allow what needs to happen, releasing the fears, releasing the barriers, and everything that stands between me and my complete healing so that I can ascend completely.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and we all signed up to be here at this time. And
it's our responsibility to find out the why.
Yeah.
Why did we sign up to be here?
Yes.
That's our responsibility.
Yes. And this human condition, it's an embrace of all. It's the pain and the difficulty, and it's all part of it, and the love and the awe and the wonder. And I want to ask your thoughts on intimacy with ourselves and that intimate self-connection, and how we can come back to ourselves through those harder times to really empower.
I'm blessed enough to be able to work with clients, and the interactions between us. I know that everyone that I interact with, when I'm working to create a healing for them, there's a healing that's happening within me as well. So I always look at a person's experience, and as I'm in process with them, asking Spirit, okay, what am I supposed to learn from me on this, within this experience? Because there's always something, it's always an exchange going on. I'm never just teaching you. You're never just teaching me. There's an exchange, right? You can call it reciprocity, right? There's a reciprocal exchange going on if we allow it to be so, So with my clients, I've learned that we love to give our power over, when dealing with clients, we love to give our power over to other people, right? It's easy to go to someone, I'm having this issue, I'm having these issues, fix it, right?
Yeah.
We love to only look at this realm of the 3D earth and say, this is it and this is all. So I'm going to go and I'm going to get that job. I'm going to get that, that doctorate or whatever. I'm going to get that white picket fence and, the 2.5 kids and the husband or the wife. I'm going to get my retirement build up, and that's it, and that's all, right? We love to put ourselves in boxes, and the boxes are, this is my religion. This is what the tenets of my religion is. So there's nothing else outside of that, All of these disconnect us from this, right? So I've been noticing this, and I'm like, and individually I've been telling them, no, it's time to reconnect with you. It's not about you and your husband, making all of this money and just traveling and, and having your kids in private school. You're dead inside. So what does that say about your existence right now, right? Mm-hmm. And, and then there's, the other stories of, I'm so broken, so much has happened to me in my childhood, and I'm not able to get past it. So I'm going to live as the victim. At some point, we all have to turn that table and decide, okay, I'm done playing the victim. I'm ready to heal, right?
Yeah.
So my take on it is, I started conducting workshops. I started conducting sacred self workshops and their awakening workshops. And what we're doing is we are reconnecting with our soul selves. So each workshop looks different. I like to utilize the Akashic records because a lot of people don't know who they are. and I'm going to jump subject. So I had a mindfulness workshop for children 3 weeks ago, I believe now. During the workshop, it was amazing. The kids were there. They were they were so open and so honest about their experiences, their fears, and their strengths and what they felt their weaknesses were. And some of the parents remained for the workshop. And so in the workshop, I asked the parents about their emotional states and how they felt about opening themselves up emotionally to other people, and if they did so or not. Every single person there as an adult said, no, I don't feel comfortable sharing my true emotions with people, sharing who I truly am with people. And that's a scary place to be in. I said, oh, so, and then the kids are showing them the exact opposite, they're open and they're sharing what they do when they feel powerless and how, and I'm teaching them how, okay, this is how you reconnect. So I started the workshop off telling the kids, I'm going to give you a little secret. I said, a lot of your parents and most adults, we walk this earth and we walk it with two questions. We ask the question, who am I and what is my purpose? I said, I'm going to let you in on a little secret today, and we're going to learn who you are and what your purpose is. So we opened and we ended the workshop with that, right? And so they left there with the mantra, I am that I am, and my purpose is to simply be who I am, right? And literally, that's what I'm having to reteach other adults. Their I am, their power, their self-empowerment, and stripping away that belief that I'm not enough. That the belief of I have to compare myself to someone else to be okay. That belief of, I have to exist in this abuse because it's my reality, right? So all of my work is literally veering towards that right now. And it will inevitably change. It shifted last week during a workshop. Last Friday, before the workshop, I sat in my bedroom. I was in my bedroom before the workshop. And it was a self-awakening workshop. And I called in the guides, the guardians, and the ancestors of everybody. And I didn't even know who was all coming. But everybody who would be in attendance at that workshop. And I called in whatever the healing their souls needed for that day, that they would come in and they would support that healing. And that healing will be made so. I ended that. And you know what Spirit said to me? What? It's already done. I left my house. I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so fire tonight. And it really was. It really was. That night, I couldn't even, I always have to have an itinerary, right? Yeah. And it's just to keep me on track and to keep me focused. But of course, nothing happened on that itinerary. Literally everything was guided by Spirit, what needed to transpire that night. And it was so beautiful and so healing. And I started that off as I'm telling them, I'm like, look, your healing's already done. All you had to do was show up tonight. So now we're about to have some fun, but it was just so beautiful. What transpired. Each woman, picked a goddess card to work with for that night. And I explained to them, when you're working with gods and goddesses, you don't have to hold on to them forever. They're here to support you during this time. You can release them. You don't have to hold on to them and feel like, oh my gosh, this god or goddess is haunting me. That's not what this is about. It's about healing, And so I had a chakra candle for each of them. And so we lit the candles, and each one was and I didn't know, like when I was buying the candles, and literally I'm being led to do all of this throughout the process, and I had no idea why I was doing it. But the instructions that Spirit gave them is that everything that they wrote on the piece of paper that they wrote on that night of what they wanted to bring into their existence, what they were to do was keep that piece of paper, and for 5 minutes, for 5 days, put the paper underneath the candle, and every day light that candle, and to meditate with that candle and on their desires for the next 5 days, and it shall be done. It was so incredible. And just me putting my hand on someone's chest and, being able just to release the energy that's in there and the buildup that's in there, that I didn't have that ability before. I don't even know where it comes from, the work that I've done, of course, but it's just where I am right now on my journey. And I know that this is, again, just a stepping stone, and it'll be something else within the next 3 months,
Yes.
So it was beautiful. It was beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so special.
Really, it was amazing.
And I believe when we first met, we were connecting about how we are these evolutionary beings, these beings who are constantly evolving. And we need to allow our work to evolve with us. Otherwise, there will be this sense of stagnancy.
Yes. And again, it's about the allowance of self, and breaking down those barriers that we put up around ourselves that we think it's a protection, but it's not a protection. It's literally a hindrance that does not allow us to fully experience who we are in this lifetime and to expand and grow to the next. So my suggestion for anybody that's actually feeling limited, so everybody who's feeling like, I can't get to the next, move into a space of allowance. How do I do that, Tiffani? How do I move into a space of allowance, right? It can simply be by intention, right? There's some power. Like we have Wiccans and witches and voodoos, priestesses. Do you know how they make magic happen? How I make magic happen is through my intention. It's powerful, right? So if I set the intention of change, of healing, of removing something from my life, that's step number 1. Step number 2 is moving with that intention to stop self-sabotaging. If you are acting in a way, if you are moving in circles that are contrary to the intention that you just set and you created, then it's time to remove yourself from that space. It's time to remove yourself from that circle. Magic is not this big thing that's out in the sky. It's right here. And it's through our everyday actions is how we create the change that we need for ourselves in our lives. And you might not see it immediately. You might not see it tomorrow. But if you stay committed to self, you're going to see it. It's inevitable.
Yeah. It's so true. And sometimes the universe provides something even better than we could have created it within our own minds. Yeah. So there's that openness, that invitation of like, okay, this is my intention and let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens, right? And don't limit it, because a lot of times I'll give you this last story before we run out of time. I was going through last summer. I was going through this I don't know what it was. It was before the first equinox over the summer. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. I cannot exist this way. I was going through some things, right? So what was funny is I was sitting out on the atrium of my friend's house watching the ocean one morning. And I said, Spirit, why don't I ever get what I asked for? And Spirit instantly responded and said, you always get what you ask for. Pay attention, right? So I'm looking around and I'm like, what? So then I start thinking, and I was like, wait a minute. I set the intention that I wanted to rent a summer home from my mother's partner, right? Who had a home in Oregon near the ocean that she never utilized, right? And this was like in late July of last summer. I said, I set the intention in January that I wanted to spend the summer in Oregon, right? And Spirit said, where are you right now? Girl, I was in Oregon at my girlfriend's house, right off the ocean, living rent-free for the summer, I was like, wait a minute, okay. And like Spirit just started showing me all of these things that are evident in my journey, that because they didn't manifest exactly the way that I asked for them, I assumed it didn't happen. And it was happening right then and right there.
Wow.
So don't ever think that your life isn't happening for you. Have your intentions. Be specific in your intentions, but don't say this is the only way that it can manifest and show up, because then you're going to always be disappointed. Allow the universe to work for you. Allow the universe to manifest in the best way for you, because at the end of the day, this is a learning journey, right? So they're trying to figure out, how do I make this work for her while to also make it a learning possibility for her. So they're not just giving you stuff. It's a part of the journey of learning and growing, right? So they got a lot to figure out over there in that other realm.
It's true. It's very, very complex.
Yes.
Wow. This has been amazing catching up with you.
It really has. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I would love to hear, Tiffani, like anything you're excited about in your business, any way people can stay connected with you, anything you want to share.
So I just recently expanded my business to another region of Vegas. I've collaborated with a team at Spirit and Spark, and we're a bunch of independent contracted entrepreneurs, and we are building a business together. So we have, energy practitioners, we have counselors, we have mediums, we have me, and we're literally building this new business together, which is so amazing. And it's something that I refuse to let myself talk myself out of, and Spirit is really blessing it. So if you like, you can check it out at spiritandspark.com. And if you want to keep connected with me, I am on social media. I have a private group called Ascension Matters on Facebook. It's an amazing group of people it's very intimate. You have to be approved to get in, because again, I always have to, ask Spirit and do a scan to make sure that the person that's asking to be invited is, a good fit for it. But it's literally a group that we just support each other in our own individual growth, and our everybody there is different. We have Christians, we have Wiccans, we have Egyptianology. I mean, we have all types of people in there, and literally we share and we support each other, and it's a beautiful, loving space, and we just help, because this ascension is no joke. So we're literally there to support each other.
Yeah.
If you'd like to, get services from me, you can always email me. It's a little long. It's t.blissful1@gmail.com. But yes, I'm on social media. I'm on Instagram as Tiffgrams. Actually, tonight I'll be on, I'm co-hosting a radio show, Hot 702.5. It's a local radio station here, and they're having Tiffani, the Soulful Intuitive, on as the co-host. So
wow,
that should be fun. But yes, please do keep in touch. The easiest way is social media. Remember the word Ascension Matters, and come and join us over there.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Thank you so much. Do you have any closing words for us before I close this space with a prayer?
Two things, I think. First thing is to always remember that whether you believe it or not, there's an aspect of you that knows that you've chosen this journey. The second thing is to remember to find out why you're on this journey right now, because it's huge. It's very, very huge. And that means that you're a very special being to be here on Suyat Earth during this time. Love yourself. Be compassionate with yourself. And always know that there's support around you and you're surrounded in love. Peace and blessings to all of you.
So I'll just breathe that in, and if you're listening, I invite you even to place a hand on your heart and to just feel into this moment, any insights, wisdom you're taking with you throughout your day, this life journey, the ups, the downs, the trials, how it's all part of it. We are on this life, this earth plane, to learn and to grow and to ascend and expand. And to know that you're not in that alone, that we're here with you, just feeling the support of us, of everyone listening at this time. I'll just bring my hands to my heart, and with much gratitude to Tiffani and to all of you listening, I'll bow. Namaste. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen to our show today. We would love to hear what you think. Take a moment to hop on over to iTunes and leave us a review. We'd be so grateful to receive it. Until next time, namaste.